conversation today is about how change unlocks growth, how thinking differently about how you approach your business, how you approach your clients, how you approach your consumers. And let me give you an example. Our journey today begins in the 1950s. If you were a marketer in the 1950s and I came into your office and said, look, I want you to buy this thing called television, you'd say, look, I want you to buy this thing called Get Out. I get kicked out a lot. I don't need your stinking television. Radio works really well for me. I'm winning on radio. But three bold brands, P&G, Unilever, and Kraft, decided to jump in because what they saw was consumer consumption eclipse where investment was. And it's in those deltas, when the consumer changes and that the companies are smart enough to also challenge themselves and change, that you create competitive advantage. And I would argue P&G had competitive advantage for the last 50 years, 60 years. And I would say, just to give you an example, the same thing is happening today. 90% of human attention is spent in messaging, but less than 1% of investment actually goes into it. Which means that the boardrooms of most organizations look something like this. Somebody in the front says, you know what? I think we need a mobile strategy. And then somebody looks up from their device very distracted and says, I'm sorry, but did you say something? But what I love about this is not just an example of boardrooms, but it's an example of society at large. We have become the most distracted society in human history. But humans will never admit they're distracted. They'll say, no. Keep talking to me while I'm texting because I'm doing something that I call multitasking. You've heard this, right? No, it's okay. I'm a multitasker. But really what they are is they are liars. There was a study that was done by the American Psychiatric Association. They asked two groups, one to use their mobile phone, multitask, send a text, and try to perform a task, and a second group to smoke marijuana and try to perform the same task. Yeah, I know what group you were in. I get it. There was a 10-point drop in those that used their mobile phone and tried to send a text and perform a task, which was twice as much as those that smoked marijuana. So if you take anything away from me today, is that you're better off being a pothead than pretending that you can multitask. Right. Okay, I know what kind of audience this is. But they still say, Bonin, I get it, but show me some data. So I did a little research. Turns out 7 billion people on Earth, 5.1 billion own a cell phone and text, but only 4.2 billion own a toothbrush. So if we believe that toothbrushes are at scale, clearly this is, but also 1 billion people didn't get the text message on the importance of hygiene, if you notice what's happening in this graph here. A younger generation is doing a lot better. 96% text, 93% use a toothbrush, but only 90% use deodorant. So I know we're excited to be back in person, but guys, 10% of an entire generation smell. Protect yourself. Be very careful. It's like another pandemic. No, too soon. Okay, I love this. It says, honk if you love Jesus, text while driving if you want to meet him. Even our religious institutions understand that consumers have shifted, but yet, for some reason, as organizations, we're afraid to change, right? How many people in here have ever thought that their phone was vibrating, but when they reached in their pocket, they realized that it wasn't? Raise your hand. Every single one of you, it's not just you, it's a disease. It's called phantom vibration syndrome. And they say people who experience it have a tactile hallucination that's vaguely similar to meth heads. So there's somebody in a dark corner going, oh my God, please, just send me an emoji, send me a Bitmoji, please text me, I'm feeding over here. And those cheap ones are like, also just WhatsApp me, I can't afford this text bill. Anyway, so while we're strung out, consumer behavior changes. So I asked myself, okay, how do we learn how to change our mindset? How do we learn how to hack the way that we approach the world? And I looked at tech, we can talk about that, but I wanted to look at other examples. So here's a guy named Stellog. Stellog's hacking his own body to prove that humanity can be different. So in his arm, he's got a 3D printed ear. And in that ear, he's got a Bluetooth microphone. And so when his phone rings, he answers his phone by talking to the ear in his arm. Hello? Hello, can you hear me now? Hello? That joke never lands. Anyway, so, for like 10 years, by the way. So, but he's challenging the nature of humanity and even hacking his own self, hacking his own thoughts of what his body should be or could be. Here's a guy named Hugh Hare. Hugh Hare's story is very simple. At 17, he was considered one of the best mountain climbers in the world. He climbed, him and his best friend, they got stuck in a blizzard. His best friend died. He lost both of his legs. A week later, after coming back from the hospital with his prosthetics, his brother realized he needed to climb again and encouraged him to go out climbing. As he was climbing, he chipped a toe on his prosthetics, but he realized he could actually climb better. So he came home and he began to hack his prosthetic limbs until he could climb better than he could even with his human limbs. At that time, he was a D student, but he decided that he was going to dedicate his life from turning disability into ability. Today, he is a doctorate at MIT, and he's created a pair of bionic limbs. He's considered the world's first bionic that operate just like human limbs. He can run, he can jump. When he pushes down, they push back just like human limbs. He believes he'll get this to $3,000, truly transforming disability prosthetics as we know it. But the thing I find most interesting is that he saw an opportunity to even challenge what he thought was possible. And that's what we need to ask ourselves. How do we challenge what even we think is possible? So, I got a few rules to help you do that. So first, when I think about how we approach marketing differently, aspirations versus allocation. It's one thing to aspire to do something, it's another thing to actually allocate the time, resources, effort that's necessary to build the muscle memory so that you can grow. Operate in real time. Situations on the ground constantly change. The set it and forget it mentality no longer works. But it's not just how do you send out Facebook posts in real time, it's actually how do you change your business to deliver products in real time. Become resourceful. It's not about how much money you have to spend, it's about how well you spend that money. It's about how you utilize other value that you have in front of you, and I'll show some examples. Operationalizing for innovation. How do you make sure that you're creating guardrails and structures that are forcing innovation for yourself, for your organizations, your clients, and your teams? And the last is, if you can accomplish this, you can create environments that create change and, more importantly, curiosity. And I think curiosity is the most important skill set that we can all build. How am I constantly curious? My biggest concern is becoming irrelevant. So I spend my life trying to learn new things from all other sectors. How do we do that?